The Krillian Empire had conquered 47 star systems in 3 standard cycles. Their fleet, a gleaming armada of bioorganic vessels that pulsed with bioluminescent threat displays, had never encountered meaningful resistance. So when the distress beacon from the mining colony on Kepler 430, 8b reached their nearest battle group, Commander Zeixther dismissed it with the equivalent of a laugh, a clicking series of mandible snaps that his bridge crew echoed. Another primitive species, Zeixther buzzed, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. Deploy a single corvette, harvest their resources, add them to the tribute worlds. But the report that came back 3 hours later made his antenna twitch with confusion. "Commander," his communications officer chittered nervously, "the corvette reports a single vessel defending the colony. They describe it as ancient, primitive propulsion, chemical rockets for maneuvering. It appears to be held together with metal plates and welding." The bridge crew's laughter was a symphony of clicks and chirps. Zeixther's thorax vibrated with amusement. "One ship, against the might of Krillia. This will be entertainment. Send the cruiser devouring maw. I want visual records of this antique's destruction." Elsa Martinez gripped the worn handles of her tactical console aboard the UNSC Indomitable, her knuckles white beneath her dark skin. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the ship's struggling environmental systems. Around her, the bridge was a cramped maze of exposed conduits, flickering monitors, and the persistent smell of recycled air and machine oil. "David, tell me you've got something," she called to the young engineer hunched over the power distribution panel, his Italian accent thick with stress. "The reactor is at 40%, David replied, his fingers dancing across the ancient interface. "Elsa, this ship is 200 years old. She was supposed to be decommissioned decades ago. We're running on spare parts and prayers." "Then pray harder," Elsa snapped, her eyes fixed on the sensor display. The Krillian cruiser was approaching, 10 times their mass, its organic hull rippling with predatory intent. Because those bug bastards just jumped into weapons range. The Indomitable was a relic, one of the first human warships designed for deep space combat, built during the expansion wars when humanity clawed its way to the stars through desperation and ingenuity. Her hull was scarred tungsten carbide armor. Her weapons were primitive railguns and nuclear-tipped missiles. Her AI had been replaced 3 times, and her current one had a glitch that made it randomly quote ancient Earth poetry. She was outmatched, outgunned, and obsolete. She was also crewed by humans. Commander Zeixther watched the visual feed with growing amusement. The human vessel, if one could call that floating scrapyard a vessel, was maneuvering with chemical thrusters, leaving trails of expelled gas like a wounded animal bleeding into space. "Primitive," he buzzed. "Target their propulsion. I want them alive for questioning. The Empire will enjoy learning about this species." The devouring maw unleashed a pulse of bioplasma, a controlled burst meant to cripple, not destroy. It streaked across the void, brilliant and precise. And missed. Zeixther's antennae stood rigid. What? The human ship had jinked, not with the smooth grace of gravitic drives, but with a violent, unpredictable burst from a dozen directional thrusters firing in sequence. It was crude. It was inefficient. It was impossible to predict. "Target again," Zeixther ordered, irritation creeping into his clicks. The second plasma burst missed by even wider margin. The human ship was dancing through space like a leaf in a storm, its movements chaotic, random, following no algorithm his tactical AI could anticipate. Because there was no algorithm, Elsa was flying on instinct, her hands moving faster than thought, her brain processing vectors and velocities with the unconscious genius of a species that had spent millennia as persistence hunters on African savannas. "David weapons," she shouted. "Railgun capacitors at 60%. Fire anyway." The tungsten slug left the Indomitable's main gun at a fraction of light speed. It wasn't elegant bioplasma or quantum torpedoes. It was a chunk of metal accelerated by electromagnetic force, simple, brutal physics that humanity had perfected when they were still killing each other over resources on a single planet. It punched through the devouring maw's organic hull like a spear through flesh. Zixther's bridge exploded in chaos. Alarms shrieked in ultrasonic frequencies. Biogel sprayed from ruptured conduits. The ship's living system screamed in pain. "Damage report," Zixther demanded. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. The projectile passed completely through our ablative layers. Commander, their weapon is. It's kinetic, pure kinetic energy. Our defenses aren't designed." The second railgun slug hit the cruiser's primary plasma vents. The devouring maw shuddered, its bioluminescence flickering like a dying star. "Retreat," Zixther screamed. "All power to propulsion, get us away from that thing." Elsa watched the alien cruiser limp away, trailing glowing fluid that froze instantly in the vacuum. Her hands were shaking. The bridge crew, all 15 of them, sat in stunned silence. "Did we," David whispered, "did we just win?" "We survived," Elsa corrected. She pulled up the long-range sensors. "But they're calling for reinforcements. We've got maybe 6 hours before their battle group arrives." "6 hours," David repeated, then laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. 6 hours to repair a 200-year-old warship with duct tape and stubbornness. Elsa smiled grimly. "You're Italian. Your ancestors built Rome. I'm from Texas. My ancestors fought the Alamo. Stubbornness is what we do best." She opened the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is Commander Martinez. The enemy thinks we're primitives. They think this ship is a joke. They're about to learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. We've got 6 hours to turn the Indomitable into the nightmare they'll tell their grandchildren about. Engineering, I want every railgun operational. Weapons, start printing more slugs. Medical, prep for casualties. And someone get that AI to stop quoting Tennyson." From a speaker, the ship's glitchy AI responded. "Into the valley of death rode the 600. David looked at Elsa. "Maybe the AI knows something we don't." Elsa's smile turned sharp. "Then let's make sure we're the ones who ride out of that valley." When the Krillian battle group arrived 6 hours later, they found the mining colony evacuated and the human warship waiting. She hung in space like a scarred predator, her hull bristling with weapons that should have been in museums, powered by a reactor held together with human genius and sheer defiance. The Empire learned many lessons that day. They learned that humans didn't need elegant technology. They needed physics and will. They learned that a species raised on a death world doesn't surrender easily. And they learned that sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't the newest weapon or the fastest ship. It's the crew who refuses to die.